the weaknesses in opponent's position, and that's what we are going to learn in this episode. Now, Ananya, can you tell me when would you consider a square to be weak?
A square would be weak when it's not guarded by any pawn.
Yeah, so if opponent is not able to control a square with his pawn, and if you are able to gain access to that square, then that would be a weak square. Okay, so that is extremely important. And sometimes not only one square, there could be many squares either in a particular color can be weak, particularly if one of the bishop is traded off and all the pawns are fixed in the opposite color, then those particular squares could become very weak. So there are two important weaknesses, especially in endgames, that is weak pawn and weak squares. Okay, so we should learn when we are young how to create weaknesses in opponent position, and also once those weaknesses are created, how we gain access to those weaknesses or how we exploit those weaknesses. Okay, so the closer the weakness is to opponent's king, and the more danger for him. Okay, because the weakness is very close to the king, it's not a good thing to have. So especially when we make pawn moves near the king, we have to take this factor into the account. And also the weaknesses which are deeper into the opponent's position. For example, we have 8 ranks. The first 4 ranks are in our control usually, and the other 4 ranks usually are in opponent's control. So if we can create a weakness anywhere beyond the 4th rank, that is in 5th or 6th rank, the closer to him, then more dangerous the weakness will be for him if we are able to exploit it. So let's bring the position on the board. White has king g1, pawns h2 g2, e4 f4, a2 b2 c2, rook f1 rook a1, queen e1, knight c3, bishop e2 and e3. For black, king g8, h7 g7 f7, a7 b7, e5 d6, queen c7, rook a8 f8, bishop e6 e7, knight f6. Now it's white to play. If we use the right sequence of moves, we would be in a position to create some permanent weakness in black's position. Tell me how that can be done.
So white can play f5.
Okay, what is the point?
The point is the bishop and knight are both protecting the d5 square.
Okay.
So forcing the bishop to move, if the bishop goes behind, then it's already moved. But if the bishop comes to c4, then bishop into c4, queen into c4, and bishop g5, then you're attacking the knight. And once those pieces are removed, white has access to the d5 square.
Yeah, so the square on d5 is weak here, but usually in Sicilian defense, the d5 square, only if you can gain access to it, it's a problem. And as of now, it looks like black has good control over the d5 square, as you rightly mentioned, because the knight f6 and bishop e6 are controlling. Let's assume black played on the previous move, bishop c8 to e6. So what he should have done is first take ef4, bishop f4, and then only move the bishop from c8 to e6. But that's the way you keep control over the d5 square. But in this instance, he put the bishop on e6 in directly without taking ef4, and that we can exploit, like you said. So f5 was played, and after bishop c4, queen c4. Now the knight on f6 is guarding the square d5. So as you rightly mentioned, it's bishop g5. Now the knight cannot move because the bishop is hanging. So we use this factor to our advantage, and we are forcing the exchange of the bishop for knight. So he played rook of e8. Now if it is black's to move, he would prefer to move the knight because the bishop is defended. So we don't give him time to do that. We take bishop f6. bishop f6. And now white has gained firm control over the square d5. Now my question to you, can white play knight d5 immediately, or we should do some preparatory move before we play knight d5? Basically the point is, if we play knight d5 immediately, black could take queen c2. Now is it tactically possible or not? That is the question. If it is tactically not possible, then we should not wait and go knight d5 immediately. If he can take queen c2, then it would make sense to defend the c2 pawn first and then play knight d5.
So, if knight d5, queen c2, then rook c1.
Rook c1. Okay, I take queen b2.
Knight c7, and then you can capture on e2 also, so black gets enough compensation for the extra.
Yeah, so after knight d5, queen c2, rook c1, I'll capture queen b2, and if you play knight c7, maybe I can capture queen a2 as well, and then I'll have too many pawns for the exchange, and at least I would have compensation. Probably black would even be better at times. So it looks like knight d5 cannot be played because of the variation you saw, but there is an in-between move or intermediate move white can play. Try to find it. So after knight d5, queen c2, you are not obliged to play rook c1. Something else is possible as well.
White can play rook f2.
After queen c2, white can play rook f2. Very good. Now I cannot capture on b2, so I have to move the queen backwards. Now if I go queen a4, knight c7, you lost only one pawn, and one pawn is not good enough compensation. And if I come anywhere, let's say queen c6,
then rook c1.
Rook c1, and wherever I move the queen, you will get knight c7, and you have lost only one pawn. So if you see rook f2, then knight d5 is possible. So you see a very important point I am trying to make here. Even though the position is closed, it looks like the position is very static, no pawn breaks, no attack, no forcing moves. But even here, at times we may have to calculate variations. So we should not assume that in closed positions there is no need to calculate variations. The calculation should be done in all kinds of position, whether it is closed or open. So knight d5 was played. So you see, the strong players, they are not only good in exploiting weaknesses, they are also extremely good in calculation. And to be a good player, we need to be good in all the areas, not only in few areas which we like. So here we can see how white got control over the square d5 by the timely exchange of couple of minor pieces. Okay, and we got a good knight versus bad bishop position, and white could convert the advantage. Later he created an attack on the king side by he brought the rook to f3, created an attack and won the game. Okay, yeah, so let's bring the second position on the board. White has king g1, pawns a2, b2, d4, h2, g2, f2, rook c1, f1, knight c3, knight e2, bishop c4, queen f3 for white. For black, king e8, a7, b7, c7, e6, f6, h7, f7, queen c8, rook a8, h8, knight d7, bishop g6, and bishop f8. So white has sacrificed a pawn, and he has already castled his king to safety, and most of his pieces are developed. You can say all of his pieces are developed. All the 8 pieces have already left their initial squares. Now the same cannot be said for black. The king is caught in the center. 3 of his pieces, the 2 rooks and the bishop, not developed. The queen c8 in front of rook c1 is looking extremely odd. Okay, now how can white continue here?
So white can try and break in the center with d5, and if black plays e5, then bishop b5.
Did play d5. Fischer was white, and black played e5. Yeah, so what has white achieved with these two moves, d5 and e5? Whenever a pawn is moved, the adjacent squares become weak. Adjacent means the squares on both sides, they become weak. So the pawn e6 has moved to e5. So basically the squares d5 and f5, they have become weak. Okay, and he already has doubled pawns on f7 and f6. The king is in the center. So basically the light squares have become extremely weak. Now how can we fight for control of this light squares? And he did play the move you suggested, bishop b5. Black played bishop e7 because the threat was queen into f6. So he is defending the pawn, at the same time developing the piece. Now basically we have to fight for control of these light squares. How do we do that?
So white can play bishop d3.
You want to play bishop d3. Now, if you want to play bishop d3, wouldn't it have been better had you played it when the bishop was on f8? So there's no need to play bb5, bishop e7 and then go bishop d3, right? So the bishop d3 might be required later, but not now. So first you need to try to get control of these weak squares, the f5 and e4.
Knight g3.
Knight g3, very good. And black played a6. Instead of a6, had black played castle, white could have gone h4 to create an attack. After h5, the bishop would be trapped. And the point is, after castle, he cannot meet h4 with h5 because white will simply play knight h5. But with rook on h8, black can meet h4 with h5. Okay, so he didn't want to play castle quickly. He played a6.
Now bishop d3.
Now he played bishop d3. It makes sense because the bishop is under attack. We have to move the bishop anyway. The only question was whether to take bishop d7 or move the bishop away. So he chose if bishop d7, queen d7, the queen c8's position is improved and you are not gaining control of the light squares because the knight d7 is not controlling the light squares. Okay, it's the bishop g6 which is controlling the light squares. So black played queen d8.
So now bishop f5.
Yeah, bishop f5 is very important. Why did you want to play that move?
Like none of black's pieces can move anywhere, and you're even controlling the.
Okay, fine. So the squares f5 and e4 are weakened. Okay, so you have to occupy those weak squares with your pieces. Now, if I play a move like knight c e4, it blocks the bishop d3's path. Right? So you have to occupy the squares in such a way that none of the other pieces are adversely affected. Now, if I play knight c3 to e4, it blocks the bishop d3's diagonal. Now, if I play knight g to e4, not only it blocks bishop d3's diagonal, it also takes away the square e4 from the knight c3. The knight c3 would become passive. So we have to keep seeing in how I can use all my pieces to control the weak squares. So he is trying to get a setup. For example, we can try to put the bishop on f5. The knight c3 can go to e4. But in this case, what happens to knight g3? It can go to h5. Okay. So how he is using these weak squares to place his pieces is very instructive. Now, the moment you see bishop f5, you should also ask yourself, can I do it in a better way? Can I improve the same thing by, if I can put an intermediate move and then do the same, it will be effective. Okay. This type of questions also you should ask yourself once in a while. So Fischer first played h4. Now the point is, after h5, if he plays bishop d3, queen d3, then you would have got complete control over those e4 and f5, and you can have knight f5 and knight e4. And that will be completely devastating for black. So black is forced to play h5, and now he played bishop f5. What is the point? More weaknesses, right? h4, by threatening h5, you are also clearing your back rank weakness. So one headache gone, and you are forcing him to create a fresh weakness. Apart from the light squares, he also has to worry about the h5 pawn. Knight b6.
So I can play rook f d1.
Rook of d1. The last piece which has not developed, it can go, and then you can play knight ce4, right? So basically you wanted to protect the d5 pawn before you play knight ce4. So that is very valid, it is possible, but Fischer played knight ce4 immediately because he kept a small trap, and he also saw that the d5 pawn cannot be taken. In the game, knight d5 was taken. And what's the point? Now your move rook of d1. So we are threatening rook d5, queen d5, knight f6 check. So what is black's move?
Queen f8.
Or c6. Yeah, so he played c6. Okay, so it looks like black has defended everything. He has won a pawn earlier, now he has won the second pawn, and he has safely defended the d5. But what can white do here? You cannot let him have strong pieces. The knight d5 is very strong.
Knight c3.
Yeah, very good. So the only strong piece for black in the position was the knight d5, and once you remove that, then the whole position collapses quickly. Queen b6. Now it's very tempting to play knight d5, but it's also tempting to play something else because the queen's position on b6, and that is rook d5. Because now the knight can come with a tempo, right? So c d5, knight d5. Now if queen moves to a normal square, then at least you have knight c7 check and knight into a8. So you have to calculate queen into b2. That's first. He took queen b2. Now rook b1. So Fischer had seen that the queen cannot go back, at the same time control the c7, because the squares c2 and c3 are controlled by the bishop and knight. Okay. So he took queen into a2. Now if you want, again you can play knight c7, knight into a8, but Fischer went for more. He played rook b7. So you see, the position is completely lost for black. Now there are multiple threats. The e7 is under attack, and not only that, the rook has come to 7th rank. All the white pieces are extremely active, and queen f3 is also indirectly attacking a8. So black resigned here, and black resigned because he lost the game on light squares. Okay, so from these two examples, we learned how to exploit a particular color weakness or a square weakness. In the previous game, it was the d5 square. In this game, not just one square, there were multiple light square weaknesses which white exploited beautifully and won the